our speaker for today. She's continuing with her series on the 12 powers, putting the power back into the 12 powers. And today's message is about the power of strength. So please join me in welcoming Dawn.
Good morning. Good morning. Seems like I was just here. It's good to see everyone. So, as mentioned, I'm continuing the series, Finding the Power in the 12 Powers, which is inspired by the book, The 12 Powers of Man. There we go. I had trouble with this last week, and it wasn't me, I found out. So if you see me doing this, you'll know it might be me, it might not. Okay. So The 12 Powers of Man by Unity co-founder Charles Fillmore. And so far my lessons have covered faith, love, and today we're covering the power of strength. All of these powers are always with us, they're innate, and they're working together. So strength. When I think about how I've been taught to think about strength in this culture, what comes to mind is kind of this big, strong man. And the idea of strength in this culture is kind of gendered. For men, strength is seen as being tough, with the emphasis on this physical musicality, if that's a word. From the time they were very little, men may have been told by their family and definitely by their culture that boys don't cry. Showing emotion is a sign of weakness, and being vulnerable is seen as a liability. The goal is to be in control. Many of our television shows and movies, they revere brute force. It can seem like on the schoolyard you're either a bully or you're getting bullied. And it's kind of survival of the fittest. Now with women in our culture, strength is seen with a little bit different flavor. Those of you who have been around a while may remember this description of the quintessential woman. I can bring home the bacon, fry it up in a pan, and never let you forget you're a man. Angeli perfume for your 24-hour woman. So women are expected to multitask, do it all, serve others selflessly, solve everyone's problems, make everyone comfortable, and I'm getting tired just saying it. Women are busy doing all this emotional labor, working, managing the house, watching the kids, and they're expected to smile. And another ad told us, never let them see you sweat. Then there's religion. The religion of my youth seemed to tell me that strength was not questioning, just following the rules, accepting everything as my cross to bear. Quiet suffering seemed to be elevated as a mark of faith. This included spiritual bypassing, not really taking care of ourselves or our grief in an attempt to appear faith-filled. Another cultural notion is that strength is strength against something, that it's what we use to fight others and our circumstances. All of these ideas fall short of the divine idea of strength. The divine power of strength, true inner strength, is focusing on where you're called to go and holding that path, being steadfast, steady. Strength has a vitality to it, purpose, stability. The power of strength is very tied to the power of faith. Knowing who we are at the core, believing God is living as the universe and as us, listening for the still small voice, and walking where we're guided, one step at a time. Instead of being mesmerized by outer circumstances, we give over to how this essence wants to manifest in our lives through us. Divine strength can be quiet and gentle. It has nothing to prove. Divine strength isn't against anything. That doesn't mean we don't work for change. It means we're rooted in what we believe, rooted in our calling, rooted in what we know is right, what our heart's flow is calling us to do, and we move in that direction. Moving toward what we want in the world is much more powerful than resisting and fighting against what we don't want. The power of strength can sometimes be used in misguided ways when we feel like we have to make something happen by kind of bowling people over, or maybe getting out of our lane. As spiritual beings, though, we all have this power. Or we wouldn't have walked through everything each of us have had to walk through to get here today. We have persevered, and we are continuing to seek alignment with Spirit, and that's strength. And I notice my slides are not. Okay, sorry about that. Something, I don't know if I was pushing it while I was talking. Okay, so in the 12 Powers of Man by Charles Fillmore, he talks about the story of David and Goliath. You know the story. There's this huge Philistine warrior, Goliath, and he comes to the Israelites and he wants to combat somebody. Who's going to volunteer? Well, no one wants to fight. And then David, a young, small, unarmored shepherd, comes forward with only a slingshot and defeats Goliath in all his armor. Well, unity is a metaphysical tradition, so we look to the deeper meaning. This is not just a story of a giant and a boy with a rock. Goliath in the story represents those worldly ideas of brute force that I talked about earlier. He believes in his own physical strength and his armoring. And in the story, the Israelites are intimidated, mesmerized by the surface reality as well. That can happen so easily. David, however, believes in something larger. He's rooted in spiritual strength, guided by inner wisdom. He knows who he is as a child of God. With no worldly armor, he steps forward into what seems to be an impossible situation. He follows his inner guidance, and thus he's able to achieve what he felt called to achieve. Charles Fillmore says that this story shows how easy it is to overcome the seemingly strong personal and material conditions when the mind of spirit is brought into action. I'm going to read that again. How easy it is to overcome the seemingly strong personal and material conditions when the mind of spirit is brought into action. So there you have it. It's easy. Well, I don't know about you, but I don't always find it easy. But Fillmore says specifically, when the mind of spirit is brought into action, for it to be easy, we need to be in the mind of spirit. That means we're connected to our divine essence, believing, moving in love and strength with inner guidance. Okay, then it's easy. But we're human. Earlier in the chapter on strength, Fillmore talks about our human side, about all the conflicting personalities that inhabit one mind. One person is at times wise, at times foolish, at times loving, at times hurtful, sometimes happy, sometimes troubled, maybe timid, maybe courageous. With all that going on in here, how could it be easy? How do we bring the mind of spirit into action? It starts with noticing if you're there already or not. Awareness, asking yourself, am I in a state of love or fear right now? as I said in previous weeks, if we notice that we're in a state of fear, we can reaffirm our wholeness, our essence. We can mentally invite a shift from the head to the heart. We can ask ourselves, what is needed in this moment? Offer ourselves self-compassion and care. We might meditate or pray. And we mustn't underestimate surrender. Surrender sometimes gets a bad rap. People think it means giving up ourselves. But true spiritual surrender is giving up on doubt and leaning into our divine essence. Surrender is remembering that God is living as the universe and as you. There isn't a separation. We belong to the sacred fabric of the universe. When we give ourselves over and surrender to that knowing, we are strong. We're not a weak, separate self, but part of the living, breathing universe. Fillmore also says, supreme strength, as demonstrated by Jesus, can be attained by one who trusts in spirit and conserves his or her vital substance. In other words, we need to watch how we use our energy. Right now, for example, so much is going on in the world. We can easily deplete our energy, immersing ourselves in the whole worldwide web of troubles. We can become overwhelmed, mentally distracted from divine mind, unable to act. We can conserve our vital energy by choosing how we stay informed about what matters to us, noticing when it becomes too much, setting boundaries on our time and energy. As I talked about last week, that means not collapsing into yourself or pushing into others. When we use divine strength, we learn the magic word, no. And we also ask for help when we need it. Strength isn't white-knuckling through or numbing out as a strategy, though we all do it sometimes. Last week I said, a well-tended heart naturally radiates love. And this week I'm going to add, and strength. A well-tended heart naturally radiates love and strength. I wanted to share this visual of our internal states so we can be in the comfort zone, the learning zone, or the alarm zone. So when we're in the comfort zone, we feel safe. We might be in the comfort zone when we're in a favorite place or with a loved one. It might be here at Unity that we're in our comfort zone, or when we find time to pray or to meditate. Being in the comfort zone fortifies us. When we're fortified and connected into spirit, we are best able to step into the learning or stretching zone, where we can grow into ourselves and contribute to our world. We may be a little scared or a little uncomfortable, but we are in touch with our essence, enough that we realize what we need to do, and we take the next step. As we practice leaving the perhaps limiting comfort zone, we become more and more able to stay in faith as we go forth. We begin to know when to return to base to fortify ourselves before we become overwhelmed or taken over by fear, when we would move into the alarm zone of dysregulation. The trick is to have our attention in the present moment, because our point of action is always in the present moment. This is actually a relief as a practice, because then we don't have to manage more than one moment at once, just this moment. We practice feeling into the heart space in the moment, tending the space as needed, sensing what will be our next wisest step. This sensing is embodied. It's a felt sense of knowing. Oh, my quote is no longer on there. But Fillmore says, we should think through every cell in the organism. We should think through our cells. Unity's fifth basic principle is that we need to walk the talk. So we practice shifting into the heart. We practice listening with every cell of the body. We practice following inner guidance. We practice walking in our wholeness. Again, strength is using all our resources. It's being steadfast. It is having faith in aligning with our inner calling. To do this, we need to check our posture. Good physical posture of the body helps. It opens our energy. But then we go further and we check our spiritual posture. Notice if what we're doing and how we're acting is in alignment or out of sync with what we truly believe. We then do what we need to do to realign ourselves until our innate power of strength shines forth. It's not always dramatic, though sometimes it can be. But sometimes strength is just when we quietly keep on keeping on in our life, minding our sense of connection to spirit. I trained in the Japanese art of Aikido, which is the way of spiritual harmony. In Aikido, we learn to have a good posture, to relax, to move with intention, channeling ki, which is the energy of the universe. Part of the training was a practice that we call randori. One of us would be put in the middle of the circle with everyone surrounding, and one by one people would come forward and give you a gift of energy. Well, a gift of energy might be a punch, an arm grab, a big bear hug. So you might think that the most important thing, if you wanted to hold your own in the middle of this circle, would be having superior physical strength. But the most important thing was really not getting mesmerized by the external situation. If someone began to think they were failing, then they couldn't hold their own. If, however, the person in the middle remembered that they were channeling ki, the energy of the universe, then they didn't lose their composure and they kept moving with what was happening. They were flowing like water. That is the power of strength. That is our divine essence. The purpose of the Aikido training was not to create this power. It was to believe in it and move with it. That quote's still there. Eleanor Roosevelt said, "We do not have to become heroes overnight, just a step at a time. Meeting each thing that comes up, seeing it is not as dreadful as it appeared, discovering we have the strength to stare it down." Touching into the power of strength, we can carry ourselves as if we know who we really are. Being strong is being willing to be unapologetically you. Brené Brown, who researches what it takes to live a wholehearted life, says in her Netflix special that it's impossible to act with courage if we're not willing to be vulnerable, if we're not willing to fail. She also says if we numb ourselves from pain, we also numb our capacity for joy. A lot of people are suffering right now. There's a lot of uncertainty and fear. The inclination can be either to act out in rage or numb ourselves. But the other option is to take deep care of ourselves and each other, being in community with others, feeling our feelings, and listening to the call of action of our own heart. No act of a strong, loving heart is too small. And there is no timetable for this. Strength is walking through our own life at our own pace with care and love for others, which in turn radiates out. Do not underestimate the power of strength in your life. When I was the youth director here, I would use the example of trying to learn to ride a bike. First, you won't learn if you don't believe, if you don't have faith that you can. You also need to be steadfast. You won't learn if you give up the first time you fall, and you will fall. When you do, you get up, you tend to your wounds, you persevere, you keep your focus on where you want to go, and then you ride that bike. And think of a dandelion. The Walmart goes in, the lot's paved over, the environment's completely inhospitable. And there's the dandelion, growing in the crack, being unapologetically, innately her sunny yellow self, despite the unwelcoming environment. Myrtle Fillmore, co-founder with Charles of the Unity Movement, said of children that we need to call them out, to follow the harmonious law of the soul's unfoldment. It's the same for us adults. We need to let ourselves be called out by Spirit to follow the harmonious law of our own soul's unfoldment, despite the circumstances around us. Remember, God is living as the universe and as you. Continuing a little bit with my flower theme, this is a poem by Hafiz called It Felt Love. How did the rose ever open its heart and give this world all its beauty? It felt the encouragement of light against its being. Otherwise, we all remain too frightened. I invite each of you to feel the encouragement of light against your being. Allow yourself to be called out by Spirit in your own time and in your own way. Allow yourself to align with your innate power of strength and give this world your beauty.